Modern warfare has always centered around two things: intelligence and aerial superiority. While unmanned combat aerial vehicles like the Boeing MQ-Twenty-eight and Ghostbat Kratos XQ-58 Valkyrie have been the talk of recent aerial warfare technology, cutting-edge war helicopter designs have forced their way into the conversation, with Russia's recent $3 billion invention taking center stage. How does this invention shape the future of aerial combat? What makes this helicopter different from its predecessors? Let us unpack the significance of this aerial combat vehicle as Russia tests its $3 billion helicopter. The superpower countries of the world have always been at war over economic and territorial disputes, leading to the continuous destruction of lives and properties. While alliances and opinions change over the years, redirecting the brutality across the continents like a war version of whack-a-mole, one thing remains constant: inventions. War has always found a way to precipitate some of the greatest technologies in the world, especially combat vehicles on land and aerially. However, the tide has changed, and modern combat has gone well beyond force, with stealth coming into play, leading to the construction of cutting-edge aerial technologies like the Kratos XQ-58 Valkyrie, the Dassault Neuron, and the Chinese CH-7. While these warjets have gained some popularity and wide acclaim for their effectiveness in wartime, helicopters have been neglected in the grand scheme of things. The history of helicopters is dated back to the Second World War with the creation of the Fokker-Achilles Fa-223 Drac by Nazi Germany. The Fokker-Achilles Fa-223 had a single 750-kilowatt Brahmo 323 radial engine used to power two 3-bladed, 39-foot rotors mounted on twin booms on either side of the 40-foot cylindrical fuselage. The design created a wing-shaped effect, shaping up like some mechanical bird. At a top speed of 180 kilometers per hour, the Fa-223 could cruise at 175 kilometers per hour and climb to an altitude of 7,100 meters. At the time, it seemed that they had built the world's eighth wonder, as no one else had ever seen or built any such thing as a helicopter. Of course, there were biplanes like the 1935 He-49, which was primarily designed for stealth purposes. However, the invention of the Fa-223 brought about a new type of reality and changes to aerial warfare. The Nazi German army was quite impressed with the first experimental helicopter, the Focke-Wulf FW-61. However, it was not a military helicopter. It was only an experimental creation of Focke's brainchild. However, the Nazi Germany defense did not mind his avant-garde approach. They needed an aerial combat vehicle that could carry 700 kilograms of payload without a problem, leading to the creation of the Fa-223 prototypes. A fun fact about the Fa-223 is that it used to be called the Fa-226, with no specific reason given for the redesignation of the name. Owing to its status as the first of its kind, it needed to go through flight testing. First, it was taken through a tethered flight test, and then an untethered flight test on August 3, 1940. While the Fa-223 seemed to have been credited with being the very first helicopter ever made, it was halted in production by the Allied bombing that hit Nazi Germany in June 1942, when Delmenhorst, their factory base, was incessantly bombed to the high heavens during the Second World War. Hence, the production phase was hampered, and only 20 were built. Although the Fa-223 maintained its position as the first military helicopter ever built, the Sikorsky H-5 took the spotlight. While the Fa-223 was mainly designed for military use, the Sikorsky H-5 ensured the creation of a chopper that could be used by the military and also purchased by civilians. The H-5 was originally developed by Sikorsky as an S-48. However, the United States Air Force redesignated it as an R-5. The helicopter was designed to carry out certain functions, including increased payload, endurance, speed, and service ceiling, compared to its predecessor, the Sikorsky R-4. The Sikorsky H-5 was a different beast. It differed from nearly every other chopper to have ever been made. It has a beastly rotor diameter and a longer fuselage than its predecessor, the R-4. However, as Sikorsky's market grew, making a name for itself in the military airspace, a bit of capitalism set in. Hence, they decided to modify it into a version more civilian-friendly. Setting up a capitalist venture isn't too difficult to create, especially in a class-based society where the proletariat would pay over the odds to seem completely out of everyone else's league. To lean into the capitalist market, the Sikorsky S-51 was designed with a greater rotor diameter, greater carrying capacity, and an evenly shared gross weight, providing carrying capacity for 3 passengers plus the pilot. The S-51 was designed to appeal to civilians, but also to be used on military and Air Force bases. However, it became the first helicopter to be sold to a commercial user. While the military understood the difference between the commercial usage of the flight, 11 S-51s were still ordered by the United States Air Force. Also, they were redesignated as the R-5F, and 92 of them were sent to the Navy as the HO-3S1, commonly referred to as the Horse. The Navy ordered 4 S-51s from Sikorsky in late 1946 and used them during Operation High Jump. However, the S-51s were placed into the inventory as HO-3S1. It was stealthily ferried across the seas using the seaplane tender USS Pine Island, or AV-12, as popularly called. The helicopter, first flown by Lieutenant Commander Walter M. Sessoms, became the first ever helicopter flight across the Antarctic. However, as time went on, warfare evolved, requiring an improvement in the invention of helicopters. While the S-51 had enough modifications to be both a commercial and military plane, it had more military ramifications. During Operation High Jump, it was used as a utility helicopter for rescue and mercy missions throughout the world, highlighting questions if it should have been allowed for commercial use in the first place. While the United States dominated the helicopter space with Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky, a global arms race loomed in the air like a dark cloud, and the world's superpowers followed suit, especially the United States' biggest counterpart, Russia. While early helicopter development has been through different phases of creation and versions, Igor Sikorsky remains one of the most important shapers of the modern helicopter industry. However, as his name might suggest, he was never American. He is a Russian man who fled the country during the Bolshevik Revolution, seeking new opportunities in the United States. And just like that, the Russians lost a super inventor to the United States, owing to an instability in their government. Although Russia lost Igor to the United States, they weren't fazed by the success of his invention, as they believed that they could do the same. Hence, while Igor built his choppers in the United States, Russia reacted with a chopper of their own, the Mi-1. This is Russia's first helicopter to ever make it into mass production, developed by Mikhail Mil. Before 1930, Mikhail Mil had been working on a winged aircraft that used rotation to propel its locomotion. However, a good dream is determined by planning. Mil put a lot of work and planning into the design, but he kept failing until 1946. His first designation was the EG-1, after becoming the head of the OKB-4 Design Bureau in Toshino, Russia. While he created his helicopter and failed many times, he finally figured it out. He created a final design called the GM-1, translated as Gelikopter Mila, or Mil's helicopter in English. While the Sikorsky version tried to entertain more strength, dexterity, and complex rotor movement, the Soviet engineers opted for more simplicity, increasing efficiency in helicopter control, unlike the American choppers. To achieve this efficiency, they made a rotor hub with spaced vertical and horizontal hinges. The first prototype completed its first untethered flight on the 20th of September, 1948, piloted by Mikhail Babalov. While the test was a success, the Russian military demanded an official state trial, so Mikhail agreed to their demands, and they launched their trial in 1949. During testing, 2 prototypes of the helicopter were crashed. However, Mikhail did not give up. He put in a bit more work than usual, made a few tweaks, and found an answer to the reasons for the crash. The success of his work not only gave him worldwide plaudits, but the Russian military placed a demand for his chopper, albeit under a new designation called the Mi-1 for Mil initials. While the production was initially limited to a series of only 15, ordered on the 21st of February, 1950 in Factory Number 3 in Moscow, production was not increased until 1951, when Joseph Stalin witnessed the helicopter in action and deemed it important to their warfare. The 1950s saw the growth of rotor technology, hence the Mi-1s were redesigned for increased reliability, especially the number of hours it could spend in flight. First, they created the Mi-1T, with the T representing Trexo-Chasovoy, translating to 300 hours in English. Then rotor capacity improved even further over the year, with another 300-hour improvement in the Mi-1A, and then to 1,300 by the end of production. While the Mi-1s were initially built for carrying cargo and capability to play bit parts in stealth, they figured that they could do more with a different variant that could carry even heavier payloads and operational equipment, including full radio and bind flying instruments, and utilized a more reliable engine, the AI-26VF, hence the release of the Mi-1T than the Mi-1A. However, as technology improved, the Russian defense was no slouch either. The early 60s saw the introduction of enlarged cabins and engines even more powerful and reliable than the AI-26VF, which allowed the accommodation of 3 passengers on a bench behind the pilot. Russia at the time anticipated war, and they wanted every air superiority that they could possibly have over their adversaries. So they opted for the production of a rather distinct version of the Mi-1s at the time, designating it the Mi-1MU. The Mi-1MU was specifically designed as an anti-tank helicopter. The rationale behind it wasn't too difficult to understand. Talking about defenses against a chopper, an armored tank, and surface-to-air missiles could definitely do the job. Hence, in 1961, when Russia looked casually for a counter against tanks and surface-to-air missiles, they created the first Soviet attack helicopter. While reports suggest that they had a really good trial run, for some reason, it wasn't accepted into the production stage. The trading rumor at the time was that it had a small payload capacity, and that just wouldn't do the trick for the Soviet Army. Although the Russians had responded positively to the United States helicopter production with some of their own, they were in for another rude awakening when America released a completely different beast of a helicopter in 1962, the Bell AH-1 Cobra. The Cobra was created in response to the United States Army's request for an interim gunship during the Vietnam War, and it used the transmission and rotor system of the Bell UH-1 Iroquois, which had already proven itself to be a capable platform during the conflict, but paired it with a redesigned narrow fuselage among other features. It was the perfect combat helicopter. It was equipped with stub wings used to anchor various weapons, a chin-mounted gun turret, and an armored tandem cockpit, meaning the pilots were seated one behind the other. It was shaped in a very slender figure for agility, almost reminiscent of a Cobra. Also, the slim shape makes it difficult and, in some cases, nearly impossible to get hit by tanks or surface-to-air missiles, except there is some form of pinpoint accuracy to hit the chopper. Its first appearance came through during the Vietnam War, in June 1967 to be precise. It provided fire support to friendly ground forces. In some sort of ways, it was like calling in the cavalry. Its effectiveness was almost dreamy, as no one really knew how capable it could be. Often it was paired with the Hughes OH-6 Cayuse, a single-engine light helicopter designed and produced by the American aerospace company Hughes Helicopters. While the Cayuse performed its stealth and scout mission, gathering intelligence, the Cobra followed closely like a guard dog, shooting to eliminate any form of threat in its way. The tag team operation was referred to as the Hunter-Killer mission. The Cayuse played the hunter, and the Cobra played the killer. The Cobra became the talk of aerial warfare all over the world, with an unprecedented effect on aerial combat. While one might think of the United States hoping to hoard such military might, surprisingly, they were ready to sell. And nations such as Israel, Turkey, and Japan reached out to buy, increasing their military might with the United States estate's cutting-edge technology. While warjets keep getting accolades for their service in war, as in good reasons, the Cobra AH-1 also became a fundamental part of some of the greatest wars ever fought in the name of the United States. Aside from the Vietnam War, the Cobra dealt devastating blows in Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, and the Gulf War. However, as time went on, scientific evolution caught up with the Cobra, leading to the creation of its replacement, the Boeing AH-64 Apache, during the 1990s. Although the Cobra might have been a United States creation, it was also used prolifically by the Israeli Air Force, who used it for combat during the Lebanon War of 1972, giving them an edge in the war. Upgraded versions of the Cobra have been developed, such as the twin-engined AH-1C Cobra, otherwise called the Super Cobra, and the experimental Bell 309 King Cobra. Although the Cobra seemed like the peak of modern combat helicopters at its inception, it eventually became surplus to requirements and has been reused for other purposes, including civilian ones. Numerous examples have been converted to perform aerial firefighting operations. A perfect example is the United States Firewatch Services, which acquired Cobras that have been used in combats during the Vietnam Wars and retrofitted them into a red-white perfection with infrared sensors, so they can be used to gather close-in intelligence from ground troops fighting fire. While the world watched the slim Cobra showing off at war and eventually retiring as a firefighter outfit, other world superpowers look to create a better version of this combat monster. While some have tried and failed at the production level, Russia has come up with a $3 billion helicopter project that has left the military combat landscape in awe. The Russian military had always had a trusted template for their helicopters, Mikhail Mills. After his discovery in the 40s through the cities, the Russian military fell right in league with world superpower countries that possessed a combat helicopter. However, while that time may have well passed, the Mi-17, introduced in 1975 as the Mi-M8, resumed production in 2024 at factories in the Kuzan and Ulan-Ude. While some might have an idea of this chopper's capabilities, it has been stepped up to a whole new level, and no one saw it coming. Of course, it isn't news that Russia remains at war with Ukraine. It would seem another time of war has created another cutting-edge technology in aerial warfare, a recurring theme in the history of warfare. The original version of this chopper was built from the basic Mi-8 frame, fitted with larger Klimov TV3 engines, rotors, and transmission, along with fuselage improvements for extra heavy load capacity. While most choppers struggle with hot and high conditions, where there is a low air density due to high ambient temperature and high airport elevation, and air density decreases with increasing temperature and altitude, Russia's new $3 billion Mi-17 is equipped with optimal engines like the 1,545 kilowatt Isotov TV3117VM to battle these conditions easily. Although Russia has a reputation for keeping its military intelligence a secret and unleashing it unexpectedly in combats, it has decided to export the Mi-17s, flexing its newfound military might and them sending a message of caution and protection. The helicopter has a specific design that has kept it completely different from every other kind. Its recognizable trademark is the tail rotor added to the port side instead of the conventional starboard side and dust shields in front of the engine intakes. The production sent a shockwave down the spines of competitors around the world, not only sparking a global arms race, but buyers queuing at Russia's door, banging on for a chance to buy this super air beast. In March 2001, Russia eventually gave China a license for production, albeit led by Mil Moscow Helicopter Plant, JSC, and the Sichuan Lantian Helicopter Company, limited in Chengdu, Sichuan Province, as a joint venture. Fast forward to the 21st century, and countries like Argentina, Bangladesh, and Peru have come as clients looking to buy this helicopter in an arms deal worth millions of dollars to Russia. While the military and economic tussle between Russia and the United States remains a reference point, it has never stopped them from doing business even in arms, where both countries appear to be the leading light. Their first buy from the Russian military came in 2009, and they handed over 4 of the cargo helicopters to the Pakistan Army to facilitate its counter-terrorism operations, while they played Big Brother in their diplomatic relations with Pakistan. However, not only has the United States used this Russian state-of-the-art helicopter for diplomatic reasons, they have also reportedly considered adding it to their special forces ranks, using it to obscure troops' movements. Fast forward to 2022, the Joe Biden administration announced that the United States would be supplying Ukraine with 11 Mi-17s to aid them in their defense against Russia. Imagine a capitulation of Russia under its own $3 billion cutting-edge technology. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.